So why did you tell the story about how we met? You tell it so well.
Okay, well, I'm not going to go all the way back to Wichita. I'll just start when we met in Philadelphia.
All right.
So I came to Philadelphia in 1979, and Larry was already living here. He was with the Salem United Church of Christ Church, where he was a minister. And I had been going to this piano bar to sing. At the time, I was attending the Academy of Vocal Arts to study opera. And I had been going to this piano bar to sing with Kay Karen, and a wonderfully talented pianist. And I would go and sing, things like, Victor Herbert and Jerome Kern and Gershwin and songs of that period. And anyway, so this particular night, I went in, and it was a place called the Drury Lane, which doesn't exist anymore. It was on a very small street in between Chestnut and Sansom, near Wanamaker's. And I went in and just, was hanging out, and I saw this really handsome man, and he was standing there in his red plaid shirt and his jean jacket, and had, dark hair and muscular and very hairy, just the kind I liked. Kind of man. I thought he was very sexy. So I tried to get his attention, but he wouldn't pay any attention to me. And well, it's true, you didn't pay any attention to me. He had just come out of a sort of a relationship and had determined that he didn't want to be involved with anybody. Anyway, so I went on and I sang, I thought, oh well. And so I started singing with Kay Karen. I sang All the Things You Are. I sang the Serenade from the Student Prince. And I sang the Desert Song from Sigmund Romberg's The Desert Song. And then after I was finished, he looked at me. I'd finally got his attention. And he looked at me and he said, I think I'm in love. And so that kind of did it. We got together a couple days later and got to know each other better. And within a month, he moved into my shabby little one-room apartment in the Sylvania house and lived there with me. And that was on March 10th that we met. And within a month, he had moved in with me. And then within another month following that, in May, I left to do summer stock back in Wichita, Kansas, which is where I'm from, and he stayed in my apartment. We talked and wrote letters and called each other almost daily, and I wrote him these
Oh, they were great.
These silly letters that had iambic pentameter poems in them, and
They were embarrassingly wonderful.
they were really mushy and silly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's the story of how we met, and our life has been wonderful together. I think we've had, in our entire time together, maybe less than 10 serious arguments, because he knows I don't like confrontation. So I try to avoid that at all costs. But anyway, so that's how we met.
He gets his way anyway.
Well, he was in a relationship, he was married at the time, not that relationship. He continued to be married, even when we were together for the first 11 years, I think it was. He didn't get a divorce until 11, 13 years into our relationship. But the relationship I'm referring to is one that he had with another guy. And I think he said he'd been with him, I don't know, for like a month and a half or something, and bought him a ring and all that kind of stuff. And so it was clear that it was over. I mean, he'd even given this guy, Larry got this beautiful ring made for him, Southwestern design, and beautifully done. And actually, I wear it today. I didn't care that he made it for this other guy. I think it's really a beautiful ring, and I get lots of compliments on it. Didn't really cause friction for me. That didn't. There were times in the early years of our relationship where I had problems around jealousy, when he would, look at other guys or whatever. And there were times, when we were away from each other that first summer where we both had little, trysts on the side because, well, we're men and,
And that's what we do.
and that's what we did. 2.5 months of being away from each other. But over the years, we've learned that sex was not what important in our relationship. I mean, we enjoyed it, but it wasn't a deciding factor on why we were together. And so, yeah,
And it's a good thing,
yeah,
because other forms of attachment took over and developed. And yeah, I mean, at the time that we met, I was most of my professional and married life was crashing down. And I had pretty much decided almost a year before that the way I was living was just untenable for me. I couldn't sustain it and keep my sanity. So things were pretty much falling apart. And the previous relationship that Roy mentioned was, with a person that was so immature and so uninteresting. Talk about infatuation. I mean, anyhow, when it was clear that was never going to go anywhere, I said to myself, I'm not going to take up with anybody that doesn't have something to talk about and doesn't have a salient talent of some sort. Well, lo and behold, almost a week after I set that firmly in my mind, I met Roy. I thought, wow, this guy is incredible. I mean, when he sang, it just blew me away. And it was okay that he was a really handsome young guy. But it was his talent. And then, as we got to know each other, I was captivated by, in many ways, his naivete about things, and he was charming in that way, and still remains charming today. But he's not nearly as naive.
No, I mean, I was the first to graduate from college, and I spent so much of my life in those early years focusing on singing and trying to have a career that was my life. And when you're performing and rehearsing and focusing on doing shows, you have little time or even little interest in sort of developing your mind beyond into anything that's really current. It has to do with current topics or politics or things that are more intellectually stimulating. For me, it was the music and the singing that was stimulating. So Larry, with his fascination with Jung and philosophy and theology and all of this, I even tried, I remember he belonged to the Jung Society or went to these Jung Society meetings. He was really into Jung, Gustav Jung. No, not Gustav. What was his name? Anyway. Carl Jung.
Carl Gustav Jung.
Yeah. Oh, I was close. Okay. And I even tried to read a book about Jung, and I was like, oh my God, I can't get into this. I really, really tried to get into Jung so I could talk about Jung with Larry. I couldn't get into it. But I drug him to all my performances. I remember one of the first things I did that I took him to, actually shortly after we met, was, oh God, what was the name of that Gilbert and Sullivan show?
Utopia Unlimited.
Utopia Unlimited, or Limited, whatever it was. And so he got to see that side. I mean, another thing that I really struggled with was having been grown up Southern Baptist and really struggling with my identity as a gay man. And what was it you told me? You know, I used to refer to the Bible and say, well, the Bible says this and the Bible says that. And finally, Larry would look at me one time and say,
Well, the Bible's wrong.
the Bible's wrong, you know. When I would quote things from, well, in Leviticus it says this, and here it says that, and, you know, how can I be a gay man and deal with going to heaven and all that? And he would just look at me and say, well, the Bible's wrong. And so...
That was a revelation to him. That cut the Gordian knot, or the Baptist knot, or whatever it is.
Well, it just got me to thinking about, it got me to thinking about religion, Christianity, I should say, in a broader way, and also thinking about what the Bible has to say in a bigger way, and thinking of it in different ways than how I was brought up. And that was a struggle for me to, in the early years, but it's something it's still, I would say even 15, 20 years into our relationship, it was still something I struggled with. But I'm really at terms with who I am and my spirituality and all that today, and I owe that a great deal to Larry and what he has introduced me to, and the people that he's introduced me to, and the speakers and the readings that he has introduced me to have really helped for me to come to grips with who I am, and I'm very comfortable with it. And I owe that a great deal to you.
Well, I think we've both come through a lot of different affiliations with groups and institutions, and you know, we've gone to High Church Episcopalians and Low Church Episcopalians and Methodists and Presbyterians and whomever, and tried to establish friendships through those institutions. And basically, I think over the years we were over and over seduced and betrayed by those kinds of affiliations. They always proved kind of shallow and kind of good time friends, but nothing you could count on. I think friendships that are made that way tend to be fragile and built on just good times. But Roy taught me how to lighten up and see the absurd in situations, and see the absurdity in relationships that I approached much too seriously and too heavily. I mean, he could tell we could both go through an experience together, and I'd see it from an analytic point of view in a larger context, and he would just look at it and tell the story in such a funny way, and see the absurdities and exaggerate the characters that were in it, that you begin to see life as more of a drama, if not a light comedy. So, I mean, he gave me so much freedom to get out of my head every once in a while and enjoy life. And enjoy the friendships that he made. I could make new friends that weren't burdened down with some of my old relationships.
Yeah, he got to meet all the narcissistic and performers in my life who were, not all of them were, but a lot of them were narcissistic. You know, when you talk about opera singers and people in theater, you know, these are forms of art that definitely draw people who are more narcissistic. And so they were colorful characters, many of them. Some of them he liked, some of them he didn't. Some of them, they didn't care for him, you know, and vice versa. And
Who didn't care for me?
well, I don't think we need to go into that, but you know, I think you knew that. There were some that, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
yeah.
An acquired taste.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, he's become much more mild, if you will, in sharing his opinions about things as he's gotten older. But in those early years, boy, when we'd have dinner parties and get together, he would just hold his ground, and to the point that he could be really contentious in some ways. And some people just didn't like that. And he always looked at it as kind of mind fucking, as he called it. But and he enjoyed that. He loved, you know, having debates. But not everybody was, especially a number of the people that I hang out with, just were not into those debates. One person who was and still remains to be a very dear friend of ours today, of course, is Peggy, who I went to the Academy of Vocal Arts with, and Larry just loves her. We both love her, and love Michelle, who she's married to. They're both very dear friends of ours. Another thing I should definitely mention is that I was someone who, I never wanted to have children. I should add that, you know, like Larry, Larry, of course, was married to a woman, and I had relationships with women early on in college and so on, but I never wanted to have children. And Larry brought with him into our relationship 2 wonderful children, Alexis, who at the time was 6 when we got together, and Johnny, who was 1.5. And my goodness, you know, it worked out perfectly. I mean, here were these kids that were just charming and sweet as could be, but would come and visit us on the weekends and spend more time with us during the holidays. And went on vacations with us, and we had a lovely time with them. And I grew to love them so much. They called me their step-other. Of course, when we finally became married in 2014, it meant a lot to me that I could actually call them my stepchildren. That meant a great deal to me, that I no longer had to be the step-other, as they comically referred to me. I was actually their stepfather, and I can actually call Sonia, Alexis's daughter, my grandchild. And I don't even call her my stepchild, step-grandchild. She's my grandchild. So that was a wonderful opportunity to have children in my life, and in a way that really worked for me in terms of who I am as a person and what's important for me. And it worked beautifully. And we had some wonderful times with the kids growing up.
And we also had a lot of angst. Alexis certainly gave us a run for the money when she was a teenager. She took up with all kinds of political causes, and she declared herself an anarchist, and
even got herself an ACLU lawyer that time when she was giving condoms out at school. And we were so proud of her when we saw her on the news.
Yes.
We were proud of her. I thought it was so exciting.
oh yes,
Yeah.
and my father was proud of her.
She
she would take up for all kinds of causes, and my father would say, "Well, we are always watching for Alexis on Philadelphia television," because she'd show up at political conventions and
Republican. Remember the Republican convention
Yes.
in 2000?
yes,
She was out there protesting with groups, and I don't think she did at the time, but a number of her friends were arrested and while they were protesting, and even some of them hit by cops.
Well, she was knocked down,
She was knocked down, I guess she was.
and she was on the radio within about an hour after that. It didn't take her long to leverage that into a political spot on the radio. So, yeah, she gave us quite a bit of adventure and angst, but we made it through. And today she's well, I don't know if you can say ordinary, but she's certainly a delightful mother.
She's a wonderful mother.
And
she and John, they're wonderful parents.
Has a lot of respect from the community that they live in, and yes, he's great. And my son, who wasn't as close to us because he was younger, and my ex-wife tried to shield him from the contaminating effects of our horrible lifestyle. We had to go to
Quote, horrible lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quote.
Yeah.
We had to go to court to get to see him, and it was at a time in his life that he was becoming a rebellious teenager and went through all the sullen withdrawal things. But today
It's great.
he's great. He's doing a lot of good work in the arts, and
Very talented painter, muralist, very talented muralist.
mosaic. He plays in a band. I don't know how much of a band. I've never gone to see it. I'm afraid to go see it. But you know, he's settled down and is finally creating some social equity for himself, which is good. We don't have to worry long term for him. And so when we reached the age that Roy and I had talked about almost everything there was to talk about in terms of getting to know each other, and there were fewer and fewer surprises in our relationship. We got our little doggies here, and now we have something to talk about all the time. We can talk about the kids, the girls.
So I should back up though, and you know, we've lived 3 different places in Philadelphia. We moved, 4. We lived in the Sylvania house, that I mentioned earlier, and then we moved into a place at 1128 Spruce Street, which was a 4th floor walk-up, roach-infested, hot as hell. Even though we had an air conditioner, roach-infested, just I don't know, it was what we could afford at the time. I mean, we've worked very hard for what we have in life, but I think together, part of the life that we have now was the makings in the early years was a struggle. It was not easy. There was one year I was looking back at my old tax returns. I think I made $1,500 in 1 year when I was struggling to be an artist, to become a singer. And Larry was struggling those early years after leaving the ministry, trying to find work. And but he found work. He went on to work at a lovely place called CISI, a computer place, and then the podiatry school, and then on to the College of Medicine, Women's Medical College of Medicine, which later became the Drexel College of Medicine. And I was working with a great organization called the Philadelphia Drama Guild, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was around 1987, 88, after singing around the country and sang in Florida and out in California and Detroit and various places around the country, Charlotte, that I just decided to really have the things that I wanted out of life. And because of some of the complications I was having with singing, that I was able to make a transition into arts administration. And so that became, even though I'd started part-time as early as 1981 working in arts administration, while I was at AVA and also singing, I was able to make this transition. I was so lucky to have Larry in my life at that time, because that was an extremely difficult decision for me to make, to give up something that I loved so much. If I knew I could have the career where I could make a decent amount of money, well, hopefully even more than a decent amount of money, to have the things that I know we wanted out of life, and also could do it without the complications I was having, some physical complications with singing, I would still be singing today. I miss it a great deal, even today, that's not part of my life. But it was difficult making that transition into arts administration, and I became the director of marketing with the Drama Guild, and I went on to work with a number of arts and cultural organizations around the city, and now I'm with Moore College of Art and Design, and this will be my last job with with an organization, I should say, as I plan to retire, so that I can be with Larry full time. I'm with him on the weekends during the summer, and he's up here at our place in the Poconos. Unsupervised, which concerns me. Well, it concerns me more because of that bum leg of yours and falling down the stairs or something. But Larry's been retired now for what, 4 years?
Yeah.
About 4 years, and I want to be there with him. I want to be able to spend more time with him, so I'm going to be doing that. And but it's been just amazing. It's been an amazing life together with Larry.
We've had such adventures.
We've traveled.
We've gone places that are wonderful. We've had experiences that were just sublime.
Larry took me for my 40th to Costa Rica and my 50th to Montreal. We went to Paris, we went to Rome. We did a tour of the Greek islands.
Florence.
Florence in Italy, and we've had some wonderful adventures. And when I do retire, we're talking of doing a trip across the country, loading up the dogs and staying at some Airbnbs across the country and doing a trip. Larry's been, until he met me, he had never even been west of Pittsburgh. But
I hadn't been west of Harrisburg.
That's right. And
had no desire to go.
And and it wasn't until he was in his late 30s, early 40s that he actually went beyond that, when he would travel with me to come to see me in Chautauqua, or we'd go to conferences. I'd go to a conference in Chicago and he'd go with me, or we'd go to San Francisco, or you went to a conference in Arizona and I went with you. So we've had just some wonderful times together, and it's been a great life. And when a number of states started allowing people of the same sex to get married, we were like, And I'll be honest, I think we both felt this way, that we didn't see a need for marriage for us, because marriage wasn't something that we felt needed to define our relationship after being together at that time 34 years. So when we had the opportunity, though, to get married, more for legal reasons than anything, because we didn't feel the need to really get married, we decided to get married. It was in January of 2014. People ask me, well, what was the date? What's the date you got married? And I'm like, I don't really remember. I don't remember the date we got married. I know it was in January, it was late January 2014. It might have even been February. No, I think it was January. And, but it was that March 10th in 1980 that was the anniversary that we celebrate. Because that was the date of our meeting, and that was the date that was important to us. But now that we are married, we are fortunate to have those
rights
and
obligations that come along with a contractual arrangement, you know.
Right. Which is important.
I mean, marriage is really defined by the state. The religious aspects can be either there or not there. Some people feel like they like to have the religious garnish on their relationship, but we've had it with
Garnish, the religious garnish. That's funny. I like that.
well, we've had it. We've been blessed. In actuality, we didn't need an institution to bless us, and it was more about the important legal rights that come with. So it wasn't a big deal, but it was fun. I mean, we went down to Wilmington, to the courthouse, and
Wilmington, Delaware.
yes, Wilmington, Delaware, and this court assistant was there, and he was kind of a flaming number, but he was really nice to us. And so we were waiting around for all this to happen. Another couple was there, waiting to be married, and
Alexis
we
and
brought
John.
Alexis and John and Sonia as our witnesses. Sonia was all dressed up in a pretty pink dress with little flowers all over it, and she had a basket with flowers and the rings and everything. She was our flower girl, and so they wanted to make it just a little special, and it was a nice touch. Anyhow, so they wound up being the witnesses for this other couple as well, who didn't realize they had to bring witnesses along. And then when we got married, we were standing in front of this backdrop, a painted backdrop of some tropical place.
With a plastic palm tree next to it. And
It was so tacky.
it was so tacky, it was great.
It was wonderful.
It was wonderful. It was so kitsch. No. You stay here with us. No, stay here with me.
The thing is, when people get married, they're taking a chance. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know how what your feelings are going to be like later on. You don't even know each other that well, and you just hope for the happily ever after. And that's a bit of a crapshoot these days. But when we got married, we had already had the happily ever after. We knew how it was going to turn out. So this was sort of more of a coda than an overture. It was fun,
Yeah,
and now I'm kind of proud of it. You know,
I am too. I mean,
I'm glad we did it our way.
I am too. You know, the time that we bought our house in Philadelphia in 1991, we've had it now for 25 years. That at the time was a real bonding, a real sort of cementing of our relationship. And to go the step further and to get married, sort of just, you know,
Got it down on paper.
got it down on paper. And now we also have this wonderful place in the Poconos, which is where we are today. And
I thought it was when we bought our first appliances. You always said that appliances made you feel much more.
well, appliances are very important to me, but the appliances came with the house.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
so, appliances are very important to me. So anyway, and now we're here, and we've had this place. This is our 13th summer up here, and we love it and have a great time up here. Well, throughout our relationship, we've been really blessed with good health. Larry's had his problems with his asthma, but I've stayed pretty healthy, and then it was shortly, actually, it was the month after we got married that Larry came back after visiting the doctor and said, "Now listen, I have to talk to you about something." And I knew it was something that I didn't want to hear. But and he told me at that time that his PSA was like a 300 and some, and ideally you want your PSA to be less than 5. And he had been diagnosed at that time with. They went on.
Just close it.
And he had been, so he had to go see a urologist, he had to go see a radiologist, and they did further tests, and come to find out he had stage 4 prostate cancer. And, you know, in all actuality, men, when they reach their 80s or so, most men have some sort of type of prostate cancer, but Larry's was much more serious than that. And so, I'll never forget, we were at Fox Chase and we were in with his radiologist, and it was the first time I had heard that it was actually stage 4. And stage 4 is not good because it was affecting other organs or other things going on down there. And I remember I just left the room and I went to the bathroom and I bawled. I just cried and cried and cried. I was so upset. It wasn't until I heard it was stage 4 that it really, really hit me. Because prostate cancer is curable, and Larry they're managing it. I mean, he still has it, but they're managing it. He's in good shape. And so he had to go through 8 weeks of radiology. He had to get these shots every 3 months, Lupron shots they were called, every 3 months to get the PSA down, the radiation to get the tumor down, and it was a tough time. It was a tough time, and the February before that, he had fallen down the steps out here and bunged up his knee, so he not only was he having trouble walking and getting around, but he was also going through all this with his cancer. He lost over 30 pounds. And it was really, really hard seeing what he was going and what this was doing to his body in terms of the treatment and what he was going through. He looked so thin and gaunt and pale, and it was a very difficult time. And I actually went and sought out a group of men that I went to and talked with about this, because one of my greatest fears, in addition to seeing what he was going through, was losing him, obviously. And losing him because I couldn't imagine life without him, and I didn't want to imagine life without him, but also what would my life be going forward, you know, because he is my life. I have no family. I have 2 sisters in Wichita, but I don't have a good support system in place, and so I was concerned about that. So I went and started meeting with this group, and that was helpful. But as things got better and better, and I was there helping to take care of him and going through and having to do what he has to do with this stent that he has put in, and I'm there for him. I love him, and I'm there to help him through all the troubles he's having. He still continues to have on occasion, not to the extent that he did during that first year, but he's in a great place now. And we're talking long term, you know, that we're going to take this trip when I retire, and I'm always talking about what life's going to be like to grow old together. So, yeah.
My reaction often to a bad time or a bad situation is denial, emotional denial. I mean, I knew what the medical people were talking about. I knew enough about the situation to realize that it was pretty serious. But I didn't feel the depth of fear that I think many people feel. That was kind of held at arm's length to me. What I felt was, how is Roy going to relate to this? I mean, I thought more about Roy's, of leaving Roy, and of of his having to cope on his own and being, and of his sorrow and all of those things that, you know, I just didn't want him to have to go through. That was what I was more concerned about than anything else. But along with that, I looked at our life together. It made me look at our life together and see, you know, in spite of all the bad things that have happened to us and the losses that I've had in my life, our life together has just been wonderful. It's just been something to be so thankful for. And I must say that almost every day I can say that and I know this is a cliche and a lot of people say this, but I just am overwhelmed sometimes with the feeling of thankfulness. Not only with what we have, but what we have had in the past. And, you know, yeah. It's a different kind of love than when we started, you know? Our love has changed and had many, many, many colors. And, well, it's been good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah, no.